Hello and welcome back to the channel for another episode of the One Report. Today we are going to be recapping all of the action from One Fight Night 27, the first big event from One Championship in 2025. I know that there was a Friday Fights card that took place on the same day, which I haven't seen too much from, to be honest. So let me know if there was some fights worth going back for. I'm sure there were. But we are going to talk about the event that took place, I suppose, later that day or the morning of that day, depending on which time zone you're in, at Lumpini Stadium in Bangkok, One Fight Night 27. Thank you for being here, as always, as we chat about the big topics from this past week regarding One Championship. There isn't too much to get into outside of this event. There are a couple of fight announcements that we might touch on at the end, but there's nothing that I'm particularly going to spend too much time on outside of this event. As I mentioned in last week's episode where we previewed this card, this channel might be going through a couple of changes in the next couple of weeks, but there will be more on that in the coming episodes. So, of course, do drop this channel or subscribe if you want to stick around. I would appreciate that. Yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen right now, so we'll just leave it at that. But we will be back, I promise, next week to preview 170, which is a huge card. So come and join us next Monday for that. But before we talk about 170, let's talk about One Fight Night 27, which was a pretty fun card, I thought, all in all. We'll go through it fight by fight, of course, as we always do. But there was some good highlights here. Some good finishes, some entertaining contests. Yeah, I don't think this was, particularly like a home run card, but I thought it was entertaining and I enjoyed watching it. And it was good to have some more MMA back in our lives. I say MMA, martial arts in general, because of course there was a lot of Muay Thai on this card as well, and a little bit of submission grappling too. But the main event took place in MMA in the featherweight division in particular, where Tang Kai put his featherweight title on the line against Akbar Abdullaev. I have preached about this fight constantly, even before it was booked, saying that, in my opinion, it is the second best MMA fight that one could possibly put together. Did I say second best? I think I definitely said it was top three. It might even be number one in terms of the skill level of both guys, where they're at in their careers, the winning streaks that they have put together. And I expected this to be a really entertaining contest. I was leaning the way of Akbar Abdullaev. I did think that this would be his toughest test to date, and I was interested to see how he got on against an opponent in Tang Kai who is very patient and sticks to a game plan. Isn't going to make too many mistakes, or at least we haven't seen him do that in his One Championship career. And what we ended up getting was a dominant performance from Abdullaev. Now, before we wax lyrical about his performance and his potential, of course, there is the factor that he missed weight ahead of this fight and so was unable to win the featherweight title. So whilst he did beat Tang Kai in dominant fashion, he is not the world champion. It still belongs to Tang Kai. We will talk about what that means going forward in a minute, but that is worth addressing. Does that take some of the shine away? I think it does a little bit. I would say that, and I'm interested to get your guys' opinions on this in the comments. I don't hold weight misses to the same standard in One Championship because they are so much more frequent than in other promotions. For example, if somebody came into a UFC title fight, or UFC is maybe a bad example because it's it's the top of MMA in many ways. Even a title fight in other promotions, be it Bellator, PFL, be it whatever you want, KSW, Cage Warriors, Octagon, whatever it is, you don't see it nearly as often. In One Championship, I mean, we had multiple fights on this card that went ahead as catch weights or altered from what they were originally planned to go ahead at because of weight misses and hydration test failures. That happens a lot in One Championship. And so I find it hard to come away from this fight and really say, it's super disappointing from Abdullaev to put on a good performance, but of course miss weight. Whilst it is still disappointing that he missed weight, and obviously it's a big miss for him because he is not the champion despite dominating the current champion. This just happens in one championship so much that I don't know whether you can. Of course, there are things, Tankai made weight, so there are things that Abdullaev could have done better in order to make weight, but I don't know. It seems like such a fundamental issue with one in general, rather than to specifically harp on Abdullaev for this. That doesn't mean that I'm giving a free hit, because there are people that do make weight for these title fights. So there are exceptions to the rule, but we do see a lot of weight misses on these one championship cards, and so it would be disingenuous to kind of throw the book at Abdullaev when we don't do it for every person who misses weight on these cards. I am rocking a smoothie for Monday morning's beverage today. It is too cold in the UK to have coffee. Although I say that, I'm having a pretty cold smoothie, so maybe that doesn't work out. I couldn't be bothered to make a tea, so it is what it is. Hope that whatever beverage you are watching, that is peak Monday morning sentence right there. Whatever beverage you are watching, I hope that it is tasty. All right, let's carry on. In terms of the performance, got a bit of a cough as well because it is winter in the UK. It just happens. Abdullaev looked fantastic, I thought. I thought this would be his toughest test today. I did expect him to get the win. But I thought that it would be competitive, and it wasn't. Abdullaev was totally dominant across every range, particularly with his grappling. He was able to consistently take down Tankai, which we haven't really seen in the past, and just dominate him on the ground. It really didn't seem like Tankai had much of an answer. I know that he was able to get back to his feet at points, but wasn't really able to do anything in this fight. Abdullaev kind of shut him down completely. Abdullaev looked great on the feet to the point where he was completely feeling himself, throwing, doing the head switches, the no looks, kind of dancing on Tankai at points. It was an incredibly impressive performance. And of course, he did get the finish in the 5th round by just keeping the pressure on and landing some ground and pound. To maintain his 100% finishing record now at 12-0 with 12 finishes. Where does this leave them? I think that they have to do a rematch. I think that Abdullaev should be, that regardless of what else happens in this division, I think that Abdullaev should be the next title challenger. And they should run it back, and Abdullaev should hire a nutritionist. Shout out to Peter Miller. Get Condition Nutrition on the phone, man. Just do it. It'll save you so much hassle. Get Abdullaev on weight, run this fight back, because in my opinion, again, depending on how much emphasis you place on the weight miss, Abdullaev is kind of the champion in waiting. He said it himself, referencing the iconic line. It's definitely, I think it was pretty iconic at the time, but it's definitely become iconic ever since because people just keep using it. The, of course, memorable quote from Charles Dubronx Oliveira that there is a champion and his name is Akbar Abdullaev. I was super impressed, man. I really, really like watching Abdullaev. I think he is so talented. He is a special, special fighter. And this was a big moment for him. The one thing that worries me is how long Tankai is going to need off. I don't know whether he sustained any injuries, but of course he did take a fair bit of damage over the 5 rounds. He did get stopped as well. He has not been the most active fighter in one championship. Admittedly, there haven't been too many active MMA fighters in one championship, but he has fought, I believe, once a year for at least the past few years. So we will see. It's a little bit frustrating that this is probably going to hurt Abdullaev's momentum and progress in that he's going to have to wait for Tankai to come back, but that is kind of on him to some degree. So that is how it will play out. And I think that, a rematch has to happen. It was a dominant performance from Abdullaev, and I was very impressed indeed. In the co-main event, let me just switch that over. we had a really entertaining Muay Thai clash between Kulab Dam and Hands of Stone, John Lineker, that has ended up being quite controversial because Kulab Dam did get the decision win despite being knocked down in the first round. The all three judges gave the first round to Lineker with a 10-8 because of the knockdown. Lineker, just being Lineker, came out from the opening bell like a bull at a gate, just walking straight at Kulab Dam, throwing both hands at the same time as he does that marauder style. One shoulder goes, the other shoulder goes with it. John Lineker is so much fun to watch. He always has been. He always will be. I was very impressed that Kulab Dam was able to withstand that when he got dropped. At that point in the first round, I thought Lineker's probably going to drop him again in this first round, and that's going to be all she wrote. But he was able to survive. The fight was more competitive in the second and third rounds, but I don't think it was one-sided enough in the second and third rounds for Kulab Dam to get the decision win. I thought that whilst he probably did enough to win those rounds 10-9, they were quite close rounds. I thought John Lineker had some success. Not that, like, you could argue for John Lineker winning 10-9 in those rounds. I think Kulab Dam definitely did get those rounds, but it wasn't, by a wide margin. And so I thought that when it came to the decision, I thought that it would be a draw on the scorecards, and that would give John Lineker the edge because there are no draws in one championship. It goes down to who had the most impact, the most damage, and John Lineker dropping Kulab Dam in that first round. I mean, John Lineker got hurt at other points in the fight as well, but not to the point where he got dropped. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think John Lineker being in Muay Thai makes a lot of sense, specifically in one championship, because his fighting style suits this rule set so well. Like, he is so good at knocking opponents down, and he is so difficult to knock down that it just puts people at a disadvantage against him in this rule set. But yeah, I did think John Lineker deserved to win this, and what a win it would have been for him, to beat a veteran like Kulab Dam, an experienced opponent, an accomplished opponent as well. Not to take complete credit away from Kulab Dam, like I said, he did very, very well to recover from that knockdown and make the fight competitive. So I don't want to completely take it away from him. He did do very well in that fight, and it should have been a draw at the end of the scorecards. I just thought that with that in mind, the knockdown from John Lineker was more impactful than the accumulation of damage that Kulab Dam was able to do in the second and third rounds. In the second title fight of the night, we had Denise Zamboanga taking on Aliona Rasahina for the interim atomweight world championship. This fight, I was fairly critical of when it was booked. When it was booked originally several months ago, and when it was rebooked as well. I know that a lot of people shared that sentiment, and I think that the fight kind of played out in that way. I'm glad that we didn't get some kind of controversy here with a weight miss or a close decision, because that just would have made things a bit muddier than it already was. In the end, we got a decisive winner in Denise Zamboanga, but I think that her performance in this fight kind of proved why people weren't that keen on seeing this one. Of course, Rasahina does have the history with Stamp, and so that is why she was in this matchup in the first place. But, this looked like a fight between an opponent who was pretty in form and has been fairly active versus an opponent that hasn't fought in one championship since, 2021? Was it her two fights with Stamp? Yeah, 2021. And even then, her last fight was a split decision loss to Stamp. It just, I don't know. Maybe a fight between Denise and Rasahina would have been competitive several years ago, but at this point in their careers, I don't think, there was anything pointing to it being a particularly competitive fight. I expected Rasahina to test Zamboanga a little bit more with her grappling, but she kind of just didn't. Zamboanga was better than her in every range, and then poured on the ground and pound to get the Tico finish in the second round, and was kind of in cruise control from the very start of the fight. Not to say that she was taking her foot off the gas, but she was comfortably in the driver's seat from the opening bell until she got the finish. And we will get Denise versus Stamp in the future. Interesting to see where that fight takes place and at what card. You would imagine that Stamp coming back is probably a big enough reason to do something outside of Lumpini. Um, whether I don't know what Stamp's time frame is currently like. I would expect her to be back within maybe like June time, but I don't know if that's I don't know whether she's further ahead than that at this point. So maybe they save Stamp and Denise for a US card. I think it makes a lot of sense to do it in Thailand, though. Or the Philippines, that would be a lot of fun as well. I could see it being at the Impact Arena. Probably same kind of time frame as 1167 last year, which was their original date that they were supposed to fight at before Stamp got injured. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that fight. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it more than I was originally. I kind of just want to see it at this point so that we can um, you know, just see it and then do something else. But yeah, I suppose I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about Denise's chances now that she has produced 2 wins since her and Stamp were supposed to fight. She, of course, ended up staying on 1167 and beating Noelle Grandjean and then getting this win as well. She's got some serious momentum behind her, and I don't think it's going to be an easy fight for Stamp, although I would probably still pick Stamp to come out on top. But yeah, interesting. Let me know what people think in the comments below. Are you more excited for this fight now than you were last June? Let's talk about the rest of the card. Let me take a little break here to have some more smoothie. Okay. Denise obviously earned a performance bonus for her finish over Rasuhina. You would imagine Abdullaev would have also got one if he had made weight. The other performance bonus went to this man right here. That is Luke the Chef Lisi, one of my favorite fighters to watch on the entire One roster. He was in big need of a win here. You know, he's been through some wars in One Championship. In fact, all 3 of his fights previous to this one have been absolute wars. The Joe Natwood fight was incredible. The Eddie Abasolo fight might have even been better. And the Bampara Kayate fight was also a great fight that I thought Luke was looking like he was going to win until he got stopped in the 3rd round. That was last July, so it's been a little while since we've seen the Chef, and he's made a lot of big changes in his career, and it appears to be paying off for him. This performance against Cody Jerome, whilst Cody Jerome, who was making his One Championship debut, I do believe, just double check that. Yes, so obviously not on the same level as the previous opponents that Luke has been facing, but I think that there was enough. Even though this fight only lasted 1 round, Luke was able to get multiple knockdowns after hurting Jerome to the body. There was enough in this fight to show that Luke has made some changes, right? You know, he didn't just go out there and I just dropped my pen, by the way, if you're wondering what that shatter noise was. I tend to hold a pen so that, you know, keeps my hands busy. That sounded weird. You know, if Luke had just gone out there and finished this guy, you would have been like, well, he was facing probably not as good opposition as he has faced in his recent fights. That makes sense. But there was kind of a notable change around Luke, I think. Not only throughout fight week, but in the fight itself, he was a bit more composed, a bit more calculated, letting his skills do the talking. And I know that, you know, I've interviewed him in the past, and that's something he has said in multiple interviews throughout his time in One, is that, you know, he is a very entertaining fighter, and, you know, he's definitely a warrior, but, you know, he wanted to prove that he was also a very good technical fighter as well, and he was able to show that a little bit more in this fight. And maybe that comes down to the opponent. I don't know. I guess that is something we will find out in upcoming outings from Luke Lisi. But I love watching this dude. He's so entertaining, so much fun to watch, and yeah, good to see him back in the win column here. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see Cody Jerome again. And, you know, coming in against Luke Lisi, I know that he has 1 win and 2 losses, but when you look at the opponents that Luke has been fighting, they have certainly not been easy fights. So this was not going to be an easy test for Cody Jerome either. We had a submission grappling contest at a catch weight between Tommy Langacker and Dante Leon. This was a rematch. They fought or competed against each other, I believe in 2018, was it? Very, very different circumstances. But Dante Leon was able to get the win here. Not tons to talk about here. Dante Leon got the better of it in the last few minutes. I think that kind of sealed the victory for him. It's a big win for him. I don't know where they go from here because beating Tommy, you would imagine that he would now go on to face the world champion. I suppose that he could face Ty once Ty is back from injury because it doesn't look like Cade is going to be defending that belt super soon. He's going to be competing in MMA, and I don't know whether one are going to want to potentially take the belt off of him. I don't know, but I would imagine that Ty would make more sense right now for a world title fight for Dante, but we will find out in the near future. And I do think he deserves that after these two performances and these two wins that he has accumulated in one in back-to-back months as well. So impressive stuff there. We had an MMA bout. There was a few MMA bouts on this card, specifically, we had 3 in a row here. And I mean, I came into One Championship as a mixed martial arts fan. That is what I do. Of course, I cover One Championship, so I do cover some Muay Thai and some kickboxing and some submission grappling. I really twisted over my words there. But I am an MMA fan at my core. That is how I got into One Championship. And I don't know. I don't know what it is. There feels like there's kind of a weird vibe about some of the MMA stuff in one at the moment. I feel like we tend to get multiple MMA fights in a row, and it just kind of maybe it's because it's at Lumpini and the crowd aren't as into it, obviously as they are the Muay Thai and stuff like that. But I don't know. It does feel like a little bit of a momentum shift, a little bit of a backward step at points, and having 3 in a row, I don't think helps. Especially when 2 of them went to decisions. One of those was a decision win for Sanzar Zakharov, who beat Tatsumitsu Wada, and I thought looked pretty good considering the level of opponent. I know that Zakharov was saying that he's fought better opponents already than Wada, but I did think that Wada would be an interesting test for him, and Wada was able to have a little bit of success, but I did think that Zakharov did enough to win here. The second round, I believe it was the one with the constant stoppages for the fouls, and Zakharov ended up getting a yellow card. And again, after watching these 2 previous MMA fights, I just think it kind of took the kind of took some of the energy away from the building. Obviously, then we had a submission grappling contest, so that probably didn't help either. 10 minutes of grappling. Luke Lisi definitely picked things back up. This was a heavy MMA card in general for One Championship, especially if you look at the recent run of fight night events. Yeah, it was a lot. But yeah, I thought Zakharov looked good, and I think that he should probably face a top 5 strawweight next. Interesting to see who they match him with. I think Massanyane would be a good test for him. His striking is pretty fun to watch, even if it is a little bit wild every now and then. And it did lead to those multiple fouls, and that was pretty frustrating. But hey, Orgil Bataku, I could have butchered his name, so I do apologize. I really like watching Bataku fight. He is an interesting competitor to watch, and that continued here where he submitted Aaron Kanate in the first round. Kanate has had a tough go of it in One Championship. 3 losses in a row, but the losses are to Abdullaev, Gasanov, and Bataku, who I think is quite underrated in this division, honestly. I mean, this was a catch weight, but I mean, in and around the divisions that he competes in. I mean, you look at his winning streak, well, his wins in one. Of course, he did suffer that TKO loss to Artem Balak, who I don't think, have we seen Artem since then? No, we haven't. So it'd be good to see him back in there because that's a win that I think is going to age quite well over Bataku, who, he has got 5 wins in One Championship and 4 finishes. A decision on his debut, but since then TKO and then 3 submissions. So yeah, I think he's gone a little bit under the radar, honestly. But this was an impressive one, and I would like to see him matched up with a higher ranked opponent next time out. I don't know why this fight was at a catchweight. I don't know if it was Kanate or Bataku who didn't make the weight, so maybe that changes things, or whether, I don't know, it might have already been scheduled to be I don't think it was scheduled to be a catchweight originally. So apologies for not checking that beforehand. I forgot that this was at a catch weight, but um, yeah, we've already talked about weight misses. This was fight was a little bit of a surprise to me, maybe because I was pretty high on Chihiro Sawada. Maybe I underestimated the experience of Bo, who put on a good performance against Chihiro to get the win and to hand Sawada her first loss. It basically came down to Chihiro is a very grappling heavy fighter, and she wasn't able to consistently get takedowns on Mengbo. Mengbo had a lot of success in the grappling with her takedown defense and was able to keep the fight where she needed it in order to get the win. And yeah, I was quite surprised. I thought that Chihiro would be able to have more success with the grappling in this fight. I'm sure she will bounce back stronger. I am a big fan of watching Chihiro and her. I'm a believer. I'm a believer in Chihiro Sawada. So I'm sure she will come back stronger. But a really big win for Mengbo, who in recent times, obviously she did suffer that submission loss to Ayaka Miura, but who doesn't get caught in that submission from Ayaka Miura? It's been a while since we've seen her though, because that fight was all the way back in November of 2023, and she was on back-to-back wins at that point. So yeah, good to see her back and a surprising win. And I would like to see her back out as soon as possible, see if she can keep this momentum going, because a win over Chihiro is, in my opinion, nearly about as good as you can get in this atomweight division. I don't know, what will be next for her, but it would just be good to see her. My hair is incredibly flat where I've been wearing this hat, by the way. So that is why we're just going to keep the hat on. You don't want to see my paper flat hair. That makes no sense. Either way, we're going to round out this card now. Dmitry Kovtun got a win here in the first fight of the night against Sua Black. It was, it was a Muay Thai contest, so it was entertaining. But it wasn't, the bar is quite high in one championship for entertaining Muay Thai, and this fight was, it was a Muay Thai bout, and I had fun watching it, and that is kind of where that ends. And I think that is also where this episode will end. Oh, let's get to the fight announcements. I'm to be honest, not going to give you too much thoughts here, but just so that we have mentioned them, we have a couple new fights for 170, which of course comes up in a couple of weeks. We have the return of Sintimet, who is in big need of a win, and he is going to be taking on. I really don't know how to say. I assume the surname is Trujillo, but I don't know how to say his first name. Nauzet. I don't know. If you know, correct me. I should just listen to a commentator, honestly. But of course, he did get that pretty big upset win over Liam Nolan last year, and we haven't seen him since. And I thought he looked really impressive in that fight. He did have a debut loss against Rungrawi, but I thought that he looked impressive. So I think this is quite a tough fight for Sintimet, who is, like I said, in need of a win here. So interesting matchup and another good fight for 170, as is the matchup where Masaki Nori will look to earn his first win in one following consecutive losses. He will be taking on Shakir Al-Tekriti. So yeah, I mean, talk about people who need a win. Saki Noiri. And we have this fight between Shinya Aoki and Edward Foliang. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this one. I think we'll leave this until we get to talking about this card. Take everything that I said about which fight was it? Bibiano and Kevin Bellingon, and apply it to this fight. If this is these guys riding off into the sunset, one more chapter in the rivalry before they both, take their gloves off, then cool. That's fine. I understand that. It makes sense to put it on this Japan card with Shinya. Give them a nice moment at Saitama Super Arena. Apart from that, I'm not really interested in seeing it. Just being honest. There are far more fights I would be interested in watching. But that will wrap things up for this episode of the One Report. Thank you, as always, for being here, for showing this channel support. Do drop a subscribe, do drop a like, get involved in the comments, all that good stuff. It really does help. I will see you next week to preview the huge 1/170 card. I am very much looking forward to seeing you there. Until then, have a good week. Peace.